Delight today to be in Paris with Rabbi Tom Cohen.
It's a pleasure meeting you here.
Here at his wonderful shul, Kehilat Gesher. And very nice to meet you and be able to learn from you.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. I've heard much about you.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about liberal Judaism in France today. What's kind of going well? What are challenges?
What I can say about liberal Judaism is not necessarily we're part of the World Union for Progressive Judaism, so the World Reform Movement. But often when people come to my synagogue or any of our liberal synagogues, they find that it's not quite reform. It's not quite conservative. I'm not sure quite what it is. And they'll ask me, and I say, you're right. And because it all has to do with history, eventually, because the War of 1870 between the Germans and the French, when that was taken over, up until that time, there was only one way to be Jewish. It was through what was called the Consistoire, an Orthodox organization created by Napoleon, who wanted to bring some order to the Jews. And he installed that same, wherever he conquered Europe, he installed that same idea. And that's why you have chief rabbis throughout Europe. And we don't have it in the North America, South America. So that liberal Judaism had to develop in a period when the laboratory of Judaism was in Germany. And if you did something German in France at that time period, that was the enemy, even for the Jews. And so they created a liberal Judaism, a non-Orthodox Judaism, that was a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Today, when they officially could become a synagogue, the first one was on Rue Copernic in the 16th arrondissement 100 years ago, with the separation of church and state. Today, we have about 20 synagogues, so I would say 16 synagogues and 4 Chavarot groupments that are joining. So there's a big growth. And our biggest challenge is having leadership. And so we're trying to solve that on different levels.
Yeah. So tell us about this new rabbinical school, for example.
Well, that's part of the one. We created a rabbinical school. We were sending our students to Lielbeck College in London. With the separation of England from the European Union, it became too expensive for our little communities to pay for our students, at least their housing costs and their living expenses. And so we decided to take a page out of the book of a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi who was working for the French Army during the Free French during World War II. He was the first rabbi to meet the Pope during World War II as the Italian campaign was going on. When he came to France, he had along the way asked too many philosophical questions where the chief rabbi of the time period said, I can't put you back into one of our synagogues, but there's a liberal synagogue on Rue Copernic that the rabbi is too old after the war to take it over, and they put this young man in. He wanted to make Aliyah to Israel right away. But he knew if he went, there'd be no rabbi for the synagogue. So he created a rabbinical school at his time period, graduated 5 people. He got some teachers such as Martin Buber and Sholem for coming over, because he said, I have no money, I have nothing, but I have some space and I have Paris. So I can invite professors from Hebrew University or America to come and say, I'll let you have an apartment to live in free for a semester. All you have to do is do a couple hours for my rabbinical students. And he created the generation right above me of rabbis now. That school closed down with Lielbeck. So we decided to use the same thing, but now we have the technology also of internet. So half of our professors are placed here. Half of them are coming from the United States, Israel, or England for our students.
Wow. So in the States, there's been a lot of concern around anti-Semitism in France at large, in Paris in particular. Can you tell us a little bit what that looks like these days?
These days, it's calmed down, if I could use that as a term. I use that hesitantly because we have far fewer acts that are happening, but we still have now and then violent acts. So since 2002 to today, so about over the past 20 years, 13 people have been killed in France because they were born Jewish. One more recently, just several months ago, an elderly man who was unfortunately, they broke into his apartment and threw him out of his window.
13 over how many years did you say?
Since 20 years.
Oh, okay.
Wow, so, because most of the anti-Semitic acts that are happening today tend to be in private and not public.
Sense. Interesting.
Which is one of the changes. But we don't have as much as we used to have when 20 years ago. That was when it was really started up. When people were allowing people to say things that
Right.
publicly they wouldn't have said before,
Yeah.
and once you allow words to happen, actions follow.
Yeah.
It's what I've discovered here. Unfortunately, the large majority is coming from the Muslim, Islamist. Is that what we would say in English? Community. I forget now. And from the far left. It's not necessarily the traditional far right. There is some, but it's more of a pain in the tuchus type of anti-Semitism.
Right.
But the other one is much more deadly.
So, and then this far left, what's the ideology there?
It's the remake the world and the economy. So it's one of the it's an ideological left that has no compromise with even a more regular left.
I see.
So it's an extreme left.
Yeah.
And as the horseshoe effect, the extremes always meet somewhere along the line. And they have gotten in bed with the Islamist community.
Oh, I see. And how much of that is rooted in an anti-Israel sentiment versus
both?
Conspiracy theories of Jews in control.
It's all connected together and so forth. So in France, anti-Israel and anti-Semitism is much closer joined at the hip than maybe other places.
Yeah. And so I know in the States how we respond to anti-Semitism. What does it look like as a national response or as a Jewish communal response here?
Well, national response. I can give one quick. I have so many anecdotes, and I know you don't want to hear all of them. But one of them is after the attack in Toulouse against the Jewish school that was there by an Islamist brother. So the government mobilized the army, and every Jewish institution in France had for about 3 or 4 months a platoon inside their place. I was not yet in my newer synagogue. I was in a small place, like a bomb shelter of Israel, Miklat size, and I had 8 young French men and women who were stationed in my synagogue because they and I know it's a horror. A lot of my parents were thinking, why we're doing this? But I also realized if they weren't there, I would no longer have a Talmud Torah. Nobody would come. They were scared.
Wow.
There was and the army was there. And I said to somebody, but take a look, 100 years ago, or not even 100 years ago, 80 years ago, it was the army that was rounding up Jews and the police.
Yeah.
Today, it's the army and police who are trying to protect the Jews. Then we're still getting beaten up along the way. Don't get me wrong, but the background is very different right now.
Now, I think you had a congregant. You said who was that? Can you tell us about?
Well, I had an elderly congregant, very discreet woman. She would be horrified that I even mentioned her name, but Dominique, please forgive me. But Dominique Sabre was a member of my community who felt that being a woman of a certain age, being in Paris, a large city, it was no longer comfortable for her to go out at evenings, which many people might have in other large cities around the world. But on top of it, with the increasing anti-Semitism going on that she felt with the Toulouse attack and later the Hypercacher and so forth, she decided that I'm going to go back to Brussels where she had been as a younger woman. We knew nothing about her life, any family and so forth. I said to Dominique, at a certain age, it's very hard to make friends.
Yeah.
You have your your network of friends. What are you going to do? And she said, well, when I go back, I'll do like when I came to Paris. I'll volunteer everywhere. And I'll choose my friends from that. Yeah. Unfortunately, she was the day at the Brussels Jewish Museum, the day that it was attacked, and she was the 4th victim that was murdered assassinated by the terrorist. I went to do her funeral. I met her family, and what we're sitting in here, this bibliothèque, is partially the family thought that this was a woman of words. And she loved playing with words. I have this class called Lunch and Learn, where I bring a text from the Ketuvim or Nach, from the Proverbs, from the prophets or Hagiograph, and we'll study a text, and I'll have a little bit of a text with the translation in English and the translation in French, and we'll read. I'll read in the Hebrew, and then somebody will read in one of the languages, and we'll discuss it and then take apart the text. She was the type of person who would look at it and say, the Hebrew word is X. It's translated in this sense in English, and in the opposite sense in French. Why? Yeah. And for a rabbi, this is manna from heaven for us. Yeah, she was that type of person, very precise with words, and so it made sense to build in her memory.
Yeah, beautiful.
This library.
It's an honor to be in this room. Then,
yes.
Now, so much of Jewish scholarship emerged from this country. When I think of medieval times,
when you open up your page of Talmud, it's surrounded by Frenchies
right.
on either side. You know, Rashi is in the middle.
Right.
You have the Tosafot on the side, which is for 2 generations. No, this is a place where it took. That was the thing that me as a little American who came from the northwest of the United States and here, I started walking around. And I started seeing names of streets. And somewhere along the line, it ticked off in my head, wait a minute, in history, and that I would go back to my history books, and I realized that this place was just filled with Jewish history.
Yeah.
And so today, we're trying to recreate it through the rabbinical school, which will try and create a new generation of rabbis to take over from the old guys like me who should be retiring soon, one day. And we're also doing it by, we created a summer camp for liberal Jews to create because when I go to the camp and I look at the kids, I wonder, which one is going to grow up to become a president of their synagogue? Which one's going to get involved in the council? And maybe which one will decide to become a rabbi or a chazan?
Yeah, beautiful. Well, we wish you so much continued success here in the community.
I look forward to sometime going out to Phoenix.
Yes,
right. And to find out about your big Midrash.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.